Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the MMA webinar series. The topic today is the new abnormal media habits in the Cathartic times. What we are trying to do as part of our series is to bring valuable content, knowledge, understanding of the challenges that we have on our hands and how different organizations and different industry segments are working and what are the various learnings that we all collectively can look at to help build our businesses, manage our businesses, and be prepared for what the future has in store for us. These are very challenging times and people are staying home. They are consuming the media very differently. Unlike what we've seen during the internet 1.0, 2.0, and everything else that has gone past, nobody expected the media habits to be what they are right now. I was reading somewhere that LinkedIn has 1700% increase in their consumption, just as a digital medium, as a very professional, very selective medium. That's the kind of scale that they are looking at. And that's not just on LinkedIn. A lot of other TV, social media, gaming, everything has increased and increased by leaps and bounds. What that means is that there's a disruption that's going to happen. And there's a lot more innovative disruption. As they say, every adversity is an opportunity for innovation and to manage challenges. What we are going to hear today in this webinar is the report, the Magna Intelligence report put together by Lodestar and Universal Mechanics on what that future would look like and what is the prediction from the research and the data that they have gathered on consumer trends and some of the insights to understand where we are headed, and they can effectively contextualize this the report to the Asia Pacific region. So this is targeted, and the insights that you will hear is on the Asia Pacific region. There is a lot to look forward to, and I will let the speakers do that, give you the details. But before I move on to the speakers, do want to share with you a little bit about MMA. So MMA, our main purpose is to actually help work for the chief marketeers, the pioneer, the innovative marketing organizations. We are a not-for-profit association headquartered out of New York with operations across 30-odd markets around the world. And our sole objective is to make sure that the industry understands the use of mobile as a marketing and advertising medium. We truly believe this is the medium of the future. This is the only medium that engages with every other traditional medium. And some of our priorities and pillars that we work on are in the areas of measurement and business impact, driving effectiveness. We build programs around that. Organization development, which we also believe is going to be critical as we try and shape the future in the new digital world. We have a couple of programs under Smarties, which is our globally recognized awards program, and our case study hub, programs that we do around creative excellence, etc., which helps inspire the industry. And obviously, as any other industry body, we also do build standards, guidelines, work on our advocacy charge, and to ensure that we are a self-regulated industry. Advertising has never been a regulated industry. We believe if we can work together and enable the marketeers to understand the value and the publishers and the tech providers to create those opportunities, it will be a very successful future for us jointly. We encourage all of you to engage with us, to work with us. There's a lot of content that's available, a lot of ideas that are available on our website, mmaglobal.com. We encourage you to engage with us. And also, if you're not already an MMA member or engaged with us, we look forward to your engagement. So that was a very quick summary on MMA. What I would like to do next is, before I hand you over to our speakers, is to share with you how we would like to run this webinar. Over the next course of the next 55 minutes, we will have the presentation for about 40 minutes. You will have an opportunity to ask questions. So on the control panel, you have the questions listed there. You can ask all your questions and we will take the opportunity to answer either during the webinar or towards the end. We'll try and assimilate all the questions and try and get you answers. If we were not able to, we will ensure that our speakers are able to send the answers to you via email. We'll share those questions with them at a given point in time after the webinar. Couple of other housekeeping items. We will share a version of the presentation after the webinar. We will send you an email with a survey asking you feedback on the webinar, and post that you'll be able to download that. So that's a question that gets asked many a time, so I'm trying to address that. Our hashtag is MMA Web. If you find any insights very interesting and other elements, you please use that for socializing. I hope you've all understood how you can get engaged. We would like it to be an interactive engagement, so we encourage you to please ask your questions. With that, let me introduce you to our speakers today. We are very thankful to Casper and to Nandini. Casper is the Regional Vice President of in Asia Pacific, and Nandini Diaz is the Chief Executive Officer of Lodestar, based out of India. Casper's going to take the lead, and I am your host and moderator. I'm Rohit Dadwal. I look after the MMA business in Asia Pacific. So with that, I'm now going to hand you over to our first speaker. Our first speaker is Casper. Casper is going to take you through the next 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the presentation. Over to you, Casper.
Thank you very much, Rohit, and good afternoon, everyone. And as Rohit mentioned, we're going to take you through what we would like to call the new abnormal and the shifting in media habits that we see. But more specifically, if you're looking at today's content, I will start with show you 4 key trends in the media habits. Then Nandini gonna go through some of the key implications to brands, and finally, what is the implication for media advertising today? We all read the headlines, and yes, we are in challenged times. This is not just a health crisis, but an economic crisis. But as the first region into this situation, likely therefore also the first one to come out of it, we are in a uniquely placed to step up and embrace as the role and as the lighthouse in these troubled times. For sure, consumer behaviors have changed, and they changed significantly, not just socially, but also society. Our lives have been disrupted, our routines and lifestyle, and that will continue to intensify while we're going through this new normal times that we are in. But specifically at these 6 major changes in consumers' behavior. The first is the health awareness. Every single person had more focus here. Mask wearing, hand sanitization, uses have become that new normal in Asia. the panic buying and the stockpiling. We've seen that being our mentality that people are going to, as much we see those restrictions coming into play. And as more new negative news coming out, we go back to this mentalities. We also see the weathering the storm mode. Government is putting large help package into the economy. With that, the stock market is now more volatile and going up and down as information and news coming out, changing a lot of people's behavior and business behavior. But at the same time, we're seeing a huge shift in shopping behaviors to the online world. While our world has been changing, we see us cocooning. People are rebuilding their home while we are now being asked to stay at home and locked down and building offices and homeschooling and exercising gym inside our home. And finally, something we would like to call quarantainment, channels and content and hope keeping people entertained and occupied through every single day and time, often just for us to survive. In the Chinese language, the word crisis is composed of two characters, one representing the danger and the other opportunity. Many of you guys is probably aware and know JD.com, which were many years ago, back in the SARS days, were a physical electronic retail chain. And at that time, they were planning to expand their physical store with 500. They had funding for that. But that plan was put on hold with the lockdown that came through the SARS situation. The question is today now, they started their journey to becoming the biggest e-tail play in China, one of the biggest ones, the same with Alibaba. And today China is one of the reasons why they are number one, where it was something that started at the SARS. I will guess here we will see many of the new JD.com in the future, and maybe today even some of them is on this call. If we then go into the media habits, we see 4 different trends, key trends playing out. The first is the rise of the screens. As consumers retreat into their homes and uses and the time spent in multiple screens increase, our life is changing. I must say, turning to screen to survive is something I definitely can relate to, and I will guess many of you guys on today's call also can. With 3 kids that's been homeschooling at the moment, with me and my wife constantly on conference call, the screen is for us a survival, and a lot of our rules and habits here at house with our kids has changed, and often just to getting survival mode. So I think that picture demonstrates really much how our households look like today. The other thing that we use the screen to is what I call the quarantainment, and also help us re-energize. After a day where there's a lot of not as fun conversation going on in the moment, a lot of headlines you're reading, for me, just giving my brain some time to stop thinking, I go into a Netflix series and just watching a few episodes just to get a little bit more recharge for the next day to enter. We see a rise in TV viewership. For me, I think this is a short-term rise, and we already see it from the China market. While they're beginning to consume and return, the consumers return to work, we've seen a gradual decline week after week in that situation. But one thing that I don't think is going to decline is the on-demand rise. The VOD and the OTT are experience significant growth. Here's a couple of examples from Hong Kong, Korea, and India. And taking an example on Korea, where we've seen 81% of of viewing hours have increased since the COVID-19 stepped in. And I think that habit is not something that's going to change even after the COVID-19. So our advice to the marketer and the brands out there is to double down on that multi-screen. Use all the technology that have been introduced, but maybe not as in the last couple of years, but maybe not have taken really been put into place. Use all that, whatever it is, TV sync or other activities. The next trend is how e-commerce now play the key cause in any clients and brand strategy. The outbreaks have fundamentally changed the traditional retailer, their distribution, and therefore also their e-commerce focus. And again, if I'm going a bit back to myself, I have parents in their 80s, and we now see generation coming up that we never thought would be coming into this e-commerce space. Our parents in the 80s lived back in Denmark, and I was really clear on them that they should not leave their houses when the lockdown happened. But for them, it was about to get food on the table, and I pushed them into doing the online grocery shopping. And I still remember a month ago when I got a call 2 o'clock a.m. Singapore time from my parents, and I just thought somebody was dying, but they were just so excited and so proud to tell me that they have now done their first e-com shopping and grocery. And every single time that I talk with them, that's the first thing they're telling me on every call. I don't think that they ever gonna go back to what they did before. And it's a generation of people that now is stuck on, will be continue doing this. And therefore also, we see people now, the e-commerce play have had more development in the last 2 months than what we expected would happen in the next 5 to 10 years before the COVID-19. The other thing I see from my back is that the e-com play giving us the access to easy treats. And again, for me, many of my habits have been put on pause. And yeah, I get a little bit cabin fever at the moment, I must say. And to survival mode, I did this weekend. I went in. I'm into gadgets, so I went in, looked up the new Google Nest Wi-Fi. Not because I needed a Wi-Fi, but the satisfaction I got when I pushed the buy button was extreme. I cannot wait till that package is going to be delivered later this week. So they're also giving us a new consumer behaviors when it comes to those areas. E-commerce penetration and growth have been strong in Asia for a long time. We know China, Japan, South Korea, and India have been in the top 10 growth markets. But what we also see now is that the e-com space with the COVID-19 have succeeded significant increase, and especially many of the Southeast market with Vietnam, but also the market like India, China have seen significant growth in that space. It's nothing that will go back even after the COVID-19. So our advice to any brands and marketer out there is to present is crucial. The product must be available, and consumers must be able to find them, whatever situation and industry you are in. It's crucial for survival for many industry. As I mentioned, I think we will see many new JD.com popping up from the COVID-19 that we maybe didn't thought about before. The next one is the super app prevail. Super apps is a phenomenon that we've seen in Asia for a long time. We know the WeChat in China, the Line, the Gojek, even now TikTok calling themselves a super app. And we see the Paytm as well being playing into the whole mobile payment space. What is interesting to see from the COVID-19 is that those apps have been becoming even more important. And yes, some of the service has been suspended with the lockdown and some of the share bike service and share drive service, but other service in those apps have been increased even more and make daily life now possible. We see things like the food delivery service in there. We see the patents that have been streamlining the payments, so it can be done with contactless shopping, where in many markets where it was pay on delivery. We see WeChat have done in their service, in their super app, the whole tracking mechanism to see if you've been exposed to the coronavirus, something that we know Google and Facebook now working together about over in the US, but something that's already experienced here. And we see people going in to the doctor apps and booking an appointment that we didn't see before either. So our advice to the consumers of brand is to understand how consumers are engaging with these apps and customize those accordingly to it. As I said today, this is the way in to a lot of e-com, a lot of payments mechanism playing if you are a marketer or brand today. The last one is the content and interaction that have shifted significantly. Just us working from home and our home-based schooling has changed the way that consumers interact and engage with content. Video and web conferencing is something that have taken the whole world by storms in the last month. I remember yesterday when I talked with Rohit, we were talking about this conference today is not on video. And this is due to that this whole wave, that a month ago, this was still very early adapted. That has changed significant. And if we're looking at me today, I'm sitting and taking a shower every night at 8 because I'm going on conference call with my global guys. Even so that we've done this weekly because now we're on video. And even though I've talked with them on a weekly basis before, I feel more now connected and closer to them. And it will change a lot of behavior for me. I travel a lot. I think I will definitely have less travel trips to New York or even into other markets. That whole have changed. The other one is the new norm for parents and kids. So, like I have 3 kids that I mentioned that doing homeschooling in the morning. Like a 7-year and a 4-year-old is sitting in front of those screens and doing learning. The way they're growing up and learn and getting used to this video conference is something also that we will see an impact on going ahead and after the COVID-19. Yes, my son yesterday did his first football practice on Zooms, something I never thought would be possible before we went into a lockdown and before the COVID-19. I think it could change a lot of behaviors. He's going on Danish classes on Saturdays. I don't think we will necessarily continue that, but we'll find time with the more e-learning mechanism to do some of those so it's fit more into our habits and timings. So if we're looking at the statistic on that, we see business utility app growing to the roof with the Ding Talk, which is the Chinese version of Zoom, that grown with more than 1,400% over the first couple of weeks of the COVID-19. We see the online apps going to the roofs, and as well we also see the digital health app growing significant with the Ping An, the Good Doctor in China, that have a more 9-time average daily consulting than before. I can see that digital health apps changing a lot of behaviors and helping a lot of governments with some of the challenge things, especially out on the countryside where it's a challenge to get doctors, where I think more appointments, doctor appointments will happen on e-learnings or in e-modes before you're going to more serious cases into a doctor. You can save and change extreme amount of hours and change in that area. Consumers' preference for quarantainment content have changed. Exercise grow 40%. The personal and mental health as like Headspace and things like that have grown 38. Online shopping 45, cooking 40, and in the gaming space we're 92%. We personally have experiences from our client in the gaming space on how they're seeing this as an opportunity and jumping into people engaging and doing home party and things like that, and tapping into that space. What I was most surprised over is seeing some of the streaming music only have grown 16%. One thing that's very important to look at if you're a brand or a marketer is that with people's life routine changing and behavior changing, like we are not maybe doing the same thing as we did before when we were listening to music, commuting to work, or even sitting, doing our daily exercise. So it's important for brands, even in this area, to help consumer create new habits. And I will sure when that is happen, you will see the streaming music platform going through the roof. So looking at all the news content and what's been happening, yes, there was 41 million people watching the live build on Wuhan, the hospital there. We see people now, when they are quarantined at home, doing user-generated journalizing. We see short videos on TikTok going to the roof, and across the whole world. There was some market where TikTok was big before, but those new phenomenon is going extremely crazy. And as well, we're seeing the more traditional newspaper finding new digitalized distribution, while their old way of doing things being shut down because of the quarantine and the close down. So our advice to the marketeer and the brands is to create authentic content and ensuring that consumers are motivated or have motivation and are considering to those ones. So with those 4 trends, I just wanted to put today's first poll on, and the first poll is, which of these trends would have the biggest impact in your market? Is the rise of the screens, the e-com, the super app? All of those 4 options is on your screen right now, so you can do the poll while we're waiting. So please.
So we'll give everybody about a minute to answer these questions, the poll. That will be, then we'll share the results, and Casper, you can actually talk through the results in terms of your insights. We already have 50% people who have voted, so the balance 50, please have your say, and we'll get the results shared with you immediately after. Casper, there was a question, and let me take this opportunity to quickly ask you a question. There was a question from Naradas, and the question was, do you have any specific insights on the content that you presented other than Gojek for Indonesia as a market?
If I promise you, I will come back with the insight. If that is more specific to the super app, I'm not sure if that was the question, or more specific Indonesian example. I can come back with that after this session.
So we have the results.
Yeah, that's which of these? Yeah, I would say I think the e-com is now is the one thing that most people think will have the biggest impact on of the trends. I agree a lot. I think there's a close race with the screens and the content interaction. So yeah, interesting that I'll see those trends as interesting. So with that part, I will lead it over to Nandini, who's going to take you through the key implication of the COVID-19.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Casper. And thank you, everyone, for taking time out to be with us. So Casper spoke about the changes in media habits during cathartic times. For the next 20 minutes, I will cover how brands have responded, how they have fostered innovation, how credible alternatives have emerged, and most importantly, the implication of all this on advertising and marketing. The team has been referencing a vast trove of writing dating back actually to 1920. Yeah, and 1920 sounds strange, but yeah, 1920 for this. And finally, from 75 reference articles and sources, we've created a robust body of learning and knowledge. namely about behavior during the multiple recession that the world has experienced, about marketing principles that help build brands in terms of adversity, and futuristic trends that need to be leveraged today. I will take you through 5 sets of actions that brands and companies should start undertaking now in order to better manage their tomorrows. The good thing about challenging times is that you get to see the truth in all its various colors, not only in the mettle of people around you, but also in the characters of companies and their brands. A brand's choice during challenging times reveals its true personality and can strengthen, damage, or even completely transform its relationship with stakeholders. Hence, these are the times that brands should engage in responsible marketing and build trust. The second aspect we'll talk about is connected to this. We will also is the fact that while brands must stay in conversation, must communicate in crisis, they also need to strictly assess how their existing communication will be interpreted. For example, in today's context, is it conducive to in a stay safe behavior? There is enough evidence to show that going media dark may actually turn out to be an even more expensive proposition, both in terms of return on media investment and brand building. We will chat some more about the possible consequences of this. Number 4, in the future, there is clearly going to be a technology-driven behavior. Okay. Let's observe how winning brands accelerate their play on digital commerce and digital experience capabilities. And the 5th one is we all have heard the saying, in tough times, the tough get going. Brands need to prepare now for the rebound and gear up for the new abnormal. Let's dive into each of these aspects. Oh, it's not moving. Sorry, Rohit, it's not moving. Hello?
Yeah, Nandini.
It's not moving.
Okay. Why don't you try and take over from here?
Yeah, if you can, because it's not moving.
Please go ahead, and I'll take over from here.
If you can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, sure, I will.
Ouch.
It's on the next slide.
Yes. So, okay, so the first point, in times of duress, brands must engage in responsible marketing and build trust. You know, in recessionary times, consumers' mind, mood, needs, wants will be different from the norm. In the current circumstances, we need to understand how consumers actually process brand communication during a pandemic and learn how COVID-19 is changing people's daily routines. Companies have gone and will need to go beyond a business as usual approach. For example, and I put 3 or 4 examples just to bring this alive, Google for the last 20 years would traditionally put out an elaborate prank on April 1st, the April Fool's Day. However, with the seriousness of the crisis gripping the world, dedicating a day to misleading people and adding extraneous diversionary features to critical platforms like Google Search, YouTube, Gmail, Maps would be nothing less than brand suicide. Differently done, if you look at HDFC, they have taken on board the need for social distancing and have used their logo innovatively to remind people of precisely that. In fact, in different parts of the world, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Audi, Volkswagen, a few other corporates that are interpreting social distancing with something as sacred as their own logo by redesigning it. Meanwhile, leveraging on the internet's new fixation, I'm sure all of you have been seeing the conversations on Dalgona coffee. It has started trending as a part of a challenge on social media. Seeing the simple joy that it gave people who are quarantined, not only obvious brands like Cafe Coffee Day, Swiggy, but also remote brands like Dunzo or Berger Paints, which have nothing to do actually with coffee, created communication that capitalized on it. As a result of this, simple whipped coffee currently seems to have become the favorite isolation drink for netizens. Let's look at the fourth brand, Lush. On the other hand, it is just, the walk-in and retails is pretty limited. So they are trying to pull in customers by facilitating free in-store hand washing. Different brands have engaged in responsible marketing and gaining trust, and these are great examples for you. Will you go to the next slide, please? Okay. So connected to this, we will also talk about the fact that while brands must stay in conversation, must communicate in crisis, they also need to strictly assess how the existing communication will be interpreted. For example, in today's context, is it conducive to stay safe behavior? Take KFC. In all its communication, they've always spoken about the deeply satisfying and finger-licking good taste of KFC. However, KFC had to halt nationwide marketing drive. They had to admit that it doesn't feel like the right time to be airing this campaign. So we've decided to pause it for now. But Nando's, which is a competitive brand, on the other hand, decided to take advantage of KFC's faux pas. The retaliation towards the biggest competitor had audiences buy into their cheekiness. And this is a great example of how you need to stay in the conversation, but it has to be about stay safe. We'll go to the next slide. Okay. But these are examples of companies and brands that are currently communicating. Let's look at the learning from companies who decided to go media dark. World Bank data indicates that conventionally economic contraction rarely lasts more than a year. This has been validated during the oil crisis, the Gulf War, and as recently as 2008 recession. This time, however, the downturn is expected to last even shorter, as there is no real reason for an underlying global financial crisis. But while the recession may last for only a year, brands recover differently depending on their behavior during the crisis. If you look at the chart on brands during the 1980 recession, it is clear that brands that stayed media dark or decreased spends in 81-82 took substantial time to recover. Whereas brands which maintained or increased spends had a far steeper growth curve. If you look at the 2001 recession chart, brands which increased brand spends by more than 20% increased market share growth by as much as 0.9%. I could go on. There is enough evidence to indicate that brands should maintain media spends. In fact, reducing media spends can exacerbate the negative impact. Not to mention the fact that recessions throw up an opportunity to substantially increase share of voice if competitors cut their spends and media ends up dropping rates. At the end of the day, the first job of marketing is to increase the brand share of mind and move it along the continuum of mental availability. Anyone who studies how brands grow knows that a brand is more likely to be chosen if it has higher share of voice. It's a fundamental truth. In fact, for challenger brands who have been trying to gain market share over a long period of time, this is perhaps the best opportunity to do so. It's time when consumers are listening, open to change, there's high viewership, not really just high viewership, but deeply engaged viewership. In fact, I love the term that we've coined quarantainment, and all this at a great value. So all companies, particularly those with a strong legacy, I can understand, startups being queasy about investing now, but all companies with a strong legacy or long-term vision should seize this opportunity to get share of voice and consequently market share. Let me check if I can shift this. No, I can't. Can we go to the next slide? The fourth aspect that I will talk of is brands which need to accelerate digital commerce and digital experience capability. With people being quarantined, their sole interaction with the brand is virtual. And this challenge needs to be converted into an opportunity. What do you do when no one knows for sure? How does one respond in real time? Quick thinking response can actually change the fortune of brands. Casper spoke of quarantainment. People will have more time to watch. movie theaters across the world are closing down due to COVID-19 pandemic. For example, let's look at brands. What have they done to keep accelerate their digital commerce? For example, Universal Pictures announced that its cinematic release will be available to stream at the same time as a theatrical premiere, beginning with Trolls World Tour on April 10th. Some other Universal movies that are currently showing in theaters, like Emma, Hunt, will be available immediately to view. Similarly, you can see Flipkart and Tata Consumers products. They have tied up to ensure that essential foods and beverage products reach people urgently. Apart from that, Swiggy, Zomato, companies including Shopclues, Paytm have started delivering groceries in selected cities. They've all used the digital e-commerce route, the digital and the experiential route to ensure that they are top of mind. Getty, which is an interesting, these museums have shut down, by and large because of the social distancing. And Getty started a new initiative which basically said that, if there is an artwork, look at an artwork which you like and which is your favorite artwork, and make your at home enact the same artwork. And you can see interesting user-generated content that has happened on the net. To just keep the museums and Getty on relevant. And there are a lot more examples. I mean, Westfield Direct is a takeaway food available, has done a drive-through, click and collect, and has made themselves relevant. So this was the fourth one. And I'll just take you to the fifth one. Can we shift to the next chart? In fact, just to continue that, Domino's, renowned for its pizza delivery service, also announced that it will deliver groceries. It's important to leverage advertising and partnerships at this point of time, and this will help consumers get hold of the consumers and love for the brand. So the last part and the fifth part that I will take you through is brands will have to prepare for the rebound and gear up for the new abnormal. This is a watershed that will change the world moving forward and impact macro trends. We need to think big. We need to think bold. We have to demonstrate agility. We need to consider the emerging trends that will become the ongoing trend post-crisis and be ready to capture the resurgence of demand. We need to plan ahead. So while there are interesting innovations and new trends emerging, we spoke of Dalgona. For example, the fashion industry has, suddenly seen the opportunity of work from home and are reconsidering the strategies of how they will be relevant and how they can talk about work from home here. In the next, we have seen in the new period, we witness an environment where the way we work, the consumer banking, how employees learn new skills, how brands are perceived are all different. The degree to which these changes have taken root will be driven by both business and societal dynamics, as well as how long it will take to move to a new equilibrium. So I'd be surprised if education or banking or work from home or just distribution, the way it is taken off today, will it ever go back to its original form? So just to conclude this, all the 5 aspects, in fact, have been beautifully put together and used by AMUL. Can we go to the next slide? AMUL, a brand which is available in India and of course globally, much loved by Indians and people abroad. So AMUL, just to give you a context, AMUL is the largest dairy brand in India. It has about 60 food brands. It's a cooperative. Advertising sales ratio is about 1%. An understanding of media behavior in China during lockdown gave us a heads up. We knew that media consumption would be much higher. Many brands may pull back. It may be the best time to drive media value and boost share of voice. We not only maintain media investments, but we increase them. We focus on brand building. Consumers do buy rationally, but in current circumstances, maybe response to emotional communication would have been better. We changed our sports communication with focus on strength of AMUL milk and moved to family bonding and mother's love, and deploying this credible media to ensure that milk essentials are not affected. The managing director of the company also gave out reassuring messages through linear TV and electronic media, telling people to stay calm and not panic buy milk, as it will be made available not only today, now, but in the future too. Basically, further building trust. We also realized that we could learn a lot from simply listening into conversations in the digital space. We saw a lot of nostalgia, people talking of better days, missing good times, missing their loved ones as well. And one day we heard that the national broadcaster, DURESS in India, was airing a very popular epic mythological serial, Ramayana, which was a rage some time back. We saw the excitement building up and quickly onboarded. Because of the agility that we demonstrated, we obviously benefited far more. The show went to deliver a really record viewership. In fact, all the other GCs put together in the market, that are leading GCs, didn't add up to their impact shows to what Doordarshan show did. And there were means to say this too. So huge conversations were sparked, creating invaluable user-generated content. AMUL had leveraged the mind and mood of the nation. And of course, AMUL enabled digital commerce by starting partnerships with Zomato, Domino's, Swiggy, and ensure milk and milk products were delivered in time. We'll go to the next one. Okay, let's take a quick poll on the 5 aspects that I just spoke. And what do you think are the key actions your business is taking in response to these cathartic times?
So again, we will give 60 seconds for this poll to be answered. There are multiple choice questions, options that you can answer. And we will try and take this opportunity again to get a couple of questions answered. So Nandini, one of the questions that got asked right now by Ranjat is, the data generated from the energized digital media, especially e-commerce and WhatsApp, primarily used by, will help in understanding consumers and their purchase behavior, but also their basket of products on households. So would you like to comment how?
Certainly. I mean, e-com is the next, it's going to change the behavior has changed the behavior globally. And in India, we are maybe, just 10-15% there, but it will get even larger and larger. The predictive analysis that will be possible in the future because of the data that is available is going to be phenomenal. And I think it's something that we all need to be cognizant of. I'm not sure I answered the question.
Great. So I'll share the results with you now, Nandini, and with everybody.
Yeah, and my screen moved. So just in case you want to, I don't know why it had stopped, but I'm on the next slide. So if you want to give it back to me, I'm happy to do so.
Sure. These are the poll results.
Yeah.
You can see the poll results, Nandini. You want to walk them through that?
No, I cannot see the poll results.
Okay. So the results are: engaging in responsible marketing and building trust is 50%, staying in conversation with ensuring brand safety 44%, maintaining media investment at 25%, and accelerating digital commerce and planning and building brand presence is at 45 and 44% respectively.
Okay. That's nice. Sure. Are you going to switch back to this, Rohit?
Yes.
Okay.
I've given the control back to you, Nandini.
Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So let's, so while AMUL was a great example, let's look at what can we expect from the advertising market. The current consensus among macroeconomists is that the global recession in the first half will be negative and will be followed by recovery in the second half. The latest estimation of GDP across various financial institutes, which you can see here, ranges from 0.9 to 3.2. In a normal end of cycle, all economic and business sectors suffer in broadly similar way. In this particular case, because it's a health crisis and it's affecting the supply and demand in different ways across industries, leading to a more severe and a less damage in some of them. The severity of the midterm impact depends upon the changes in demand that each industry will face, and whether demand is maintained, short-term delayed, destroyed, or long-term delayed will depend on how the industry will behave in the future. For example, I mean, brands which we've looked at where demand will be maintained is like food, drinks, toiletries, pharmaceuticals, or which is finally there will be a long-term delay, will be like air travel, cruises, live shows, sports. So we've applied the behavior patterns plus supply issues and advertising industries, and we've rated the severity of the impact to business outlook and advertising spends on a full year basis. So we divided this into now 4: severe, significant, mild, and positive. And for severe, we looked at sales down to 0 for weeks, slow recovery, and potential long-term damage. And so these are the industries that we're talking of is travels, cinema, restaurants, personal services. If you look at significant, we are talking of, retail, severe for departmental stores, and mild for groceries. So within that, there are its nuance to automotive. In terms of mild, we are looking at, technology, telecoms, pharma, food, drinks, personal care. And in terms of positive, of course, is home entertainment, e-commerce, delivery, and cloud computing. Interestingly, if you look at this chart, based on 20 years of data, we developed a whole statistical model showing the relationship between economic growth and the fluctuation of advertising spends across markets, region, and global. I think everyone will easily accept that the advertising revenue fluctuations are synchronized and correlated with economic fluctuations. The thumb rule that we had, or the trend line in our model, says that it takes just over 3% nominal GDP to grow before advertising spends begin to grow globally. Past 3% of nominal GDP growth, every 1% increase in GDP generates about almost 2% ad spend growth. That's the amplification factor. In our model, zero global nominal GDP growth equates to a minus 6% decline of ad spends. And interestingly, part of nominal GDP growth has happened only once in the last 20 years. In 2009, when nominal GDP declined by 1%, real GDP declined by 2%, leading to a minus 10% decline in advertising spends. In the present situation, if we were to assume 0% economic growth for full year 2020, the statistical model suggests global advertising spends would be shrinking by minus 6%. However, there would be two mitigating factors to consider. Cyclical events. And US election, Olympics typically add about 1% of global ad spends growth in even numbered years. While Olympics has been pushed ahead, US election will add to advertising spends. We also believe that the impact would be smaller now in these days because digital media was just nascent in 2009. While in different markets, digital media ad spends vary. In some of the large markets, it's more than 50% of total ad spends in some markets, and driven by organic growth and reallocation from other marketing channels. This means that the digital part of the ad spend would slow down and probably not shrink even in the event of a recession. So to conclude, how will each of our companies perform? How will each of our clients' companies perform? How will we all morph? Will vary considerably. Now is the time to think and act. So I will end this with what is my currently favorite mantra. If not now, when? If not you, who? So Rohit, I will hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Nandini. Appreciate that. We do have only about 5 minutes for Q&A, so I'm going to quickly get both you and Casper to answer a few questions. Quickly, Casper, if you can just unmute yourself also and try and get some quick answers. So the first question is from Sujay Srivastava. What is the impact of COVID on current year's revenues of media companies? The founder and building brands India.
I would say, I think all of us is trying to figure that out right now in this industry. I think the impact on revenue is something that that is changing on a daily basis right now, and it's a little bit early to say what is the implication right now. But yes, if you ask me, we see marketers dropping spends, and in some area while the distribution is going dark, they're doing that. But I think it's too early to say what the implication is right now on revenue.
The second question is, if any, what's the impact on employees?
What is what, sorry?
What is the impact on employees in organizations?
What the impact on employers right now? I think I rather want to answer that. What is the impact of every human right now? I think is challenge time, as I mentioned. And I think is extremely important that we all stay as positive and optimistic, even though it's difficult. I think every business experience challenge at the moment, and trying to figure out what is the implication for their business on the whole COVID-19, and do what is needed to continue running the businesses.
Okay, thank you. Nandini, the next question I think is for you. How do you see the change in news media from traditional to digital in the current scenario?
So we can, so if you see the current trend, I mean, obviously the screens are all doing well. In fact, the television screen for news has gone through the roof. So is the news on the digital end, so which is all going in PDF formats. I think the question is, and it's different in India as opposed to the rest of the APAC market, is how do newsprints and newspapers make themselves more relevant, and can they actually use their distribution system, like a lot of other distribution companies have evolved themselves, not only as like food delivery and what I spoke about, but also grocery deliveries. Newspapers have the largest reach in India. How do they morph themselves? So I think newsprint needs to look at how they are going to morph themselves, but I think television and screens are doing wonderful.
Okay, next question. Quick answers, just numbers. How the question is with regard to the ad spend. If they were $100, if the marketer was spending $100 on digital media usually, how do you think to assess, and how much should they be spending during COVID times?
I wonder how anybody can answer that at a single number, because we just finished talking on how there are 4 kinds of behaviors, there are different patterns that are emerging, there are different needs and wants, and depending on that behavior, you will find different industries recovering differently. So I don't think there's a single answer to that question, and you will need to work a little more granularly on which category we are talking about, and then we will use the modeling that we have to answer that question. But I don't think there's a single answer to that. It needs to be correlated with the category.
Okay. And one more question, the last question, and for others who have sent their questions, we'll try and get your answers back from the speakers at a later stage. We don't have enough time. So this is a question from Megha. Could you please throw light on the media investment in specific for India? Has that been similar trend as of now? The advertisers are being, or are the advertisers being very cautious?
So I thought the presentation was talking of that, and obviously there are advertisers who've done well, and AMUL was a case which has actually looked at it as an opportunity, and there are advertisers who are reticent about advertising. So if you look at the data on ad time consumption hasn't decreased, but it's also possible that it's because the media value of that has changed, so hence they have got additional media value, as opposed to it just being same. It's as opposed to it being the same amount of advertising.
Okay. Thank you for that, Nandini and Casper. Really appreciate you guys taking the time. As I said at the very beginning, we will send a version of this presentation out to all the delegates after the webinar is over. And to finish this off, I would like to just share with you the upcoming webinars. On the 22nd of April, the social commerce webinar, the next normal, is going to be in Vietnamese only. It is primarily targeted for the Vietnam market. The China market, the solutions that are being developed or have been developed over the last six months in China, and especially with regard to COVID, how they are working and how they have seen the success. Navigating the shift in consumer behavior in Asia during COVID-19 is a survey that was done by one of our member companies, and we're going to present some of the highlights. And last but not the least, amongst many surveys that will be drafted in the next 6 to 8 weeks, is the story of advertising in China by leading brands of how they did during and after COVID. China is the one country which has kind of come out of COVID. So there are a lot of learnings that we plan to hopefully share with the audience as we move forward. There are many ways to engage with us. As I said at the beginning, MMAglobal.com is the place where you can engage with all these programs that we are working on. There is something for everybody that you can do. And you can also sign up on our social media handles, access a lot of these reports and webinars and surveys on our site. So that's our small attempt to make sure that we stay connected with the people during such challenging times, and getting leading speakers, thought leaders in the market to share with you what they feel, how we can address the challenge and also the opportunity on hand. With that, thank you so much. Appreciate you all taking time, and we'll see you next week for our next webinar. Good evening and take care. Stay at home, stay safe.